St. John's College Junior College gives you a warm welcome to this year's Cultural Day, a special event where we commemorate the vibrant, timeless, and distinctive folklore from many cultures in Belize. Through presentations from the Computer Science Department, we aspire to bring life to these tales which have played significant roles from generation to generation. In light of preserving these ageless narratives, we hope you enjoy these presentations.
Chantal and I will be presenting on the Belizean folklore El Sisimito. This is a picture of El Sisimito. Within this presentation, we will be covering story time, the beliefs, the dangers, and also who is El Sisimito. So, what is El Sisimito? El Sisimito is a Belizean folklore that describes a tall, hairy creature that very much resembles America's Bigfoot. And this creature is usually depicted as a male who lives in rocky lands or is surviving off of game meat. So this creature is described as a small but powerful guy who is very hairy, and it resembles a gorilla, as you can see at the bottom of this slide. And his feet were supposed to be backwards, so in another way his heel was at the front and his toes was at the back. So as a result, if his tracks appeared to be traveling north and away from you, he was actually walking south and towards you. His toes were stretched out and his feet were extremely huge for his stature. He didn't have a knee either, so his motions were very, very clumsy. There were only two things that the Sisimito was afraid of, and that was water and dogs. So some dangers of El Sisimito would include that he feasted on human beings, he tore the bodies into small pieces, and he devoured them hungrily. The Sisimito wasn't really friendly to human beings, as you can see from the example before, so the humans were very much afraid of him. So they were commonly known for kidnapping young women and taking them to live with them and forcing them to also bear their children. And then on Sundays and religious holidays such as Good Friday, the Sisimitos is believed to prey on hunters and other people who stray in the bushes. He followed the human footprints, with his main point being that he would either kill these human beings or he will rip their thumbs off. And lastly, he will also attack men who are killing animals needlessly or if they are destroying the forest.
Now the beliefs. It was said that if a man looked straight into the eyes of the Sisimito, he usually died within a month. However, if a woman looked into his eyes, her life was prolonged as a result of that. Now the tales of the Sisimito were told in camps by the mahogany cutters of earlier days, and are still passed along in villages like Ranchito and Hillsbank. These tales have also existed for generations in Mayan villages and mestizo homes, and are still told to this very day to keep children from mischief. The Sisimito are known to have different ways to ward them off, such as making them laugh by dancing. Others learn to strip naked and dance whenever they meet with a Sisimito, and that trick proved to be very useful. But perhaps the best way to fight the Sisimito is to set his long hair on fire. So as a result of that, children were taught 25 years ago never to go into bush without some matches to ward off the Sisimito. This story is entitled The Male Sisimite and was taken from Haggerty Collection, narrated by a 54-year-old man from Banco Viejo Town, Cayo District, 1978. Let me tell you about the Sisimite. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure I've heard a lot about it. It looks like a gorilla, big and very hairy. I remember one time when 4 men went out in the bush. It was right here in Belize, along the Guatemalan border. They knew it was a dangerous place, so they took plenty of guns. On the first night, they made camp and went to sleep. Sometime between midnight and 1 o'clock, they were awakened by a rustling sound in the bush. What they saw looked like a man covered with hair from head to foot. It was the guardian of the forest, the one they called the Sisimite. Without saying a word, they say it cannot speak. It went straight to one of the men, grabbed him, and tore him into pieces. What a horrible animal. The other three grabbed their shotgun and shot the creature, but it didn't hurt him because his hair was so thick that the bullets couldn't penetrate it. Then one of the men got an idea. He exclaimed, "The only thing that will work against this animal is fire." So they found some dried palm leaf, made a pile with them, and set them on fire. When the Sisimite saw the fire, he took off running with the dead man firmly in his grasp. The three survivors went to town to file a report with the authorities. The chief of police asked them, "Well, what happened?" One of the men answered, "It was a horrible animal, the one they call Sisimite. It killed our friend and took his body into the forest." So they gathered up a large group of men to hunt it down. The trail of blood was easy to follow. It led them to a rocky area, and they saw where the Sisimite had entered the cave. The townspeople were so afraid that no one dared to go in after it. Instead, they threw several sticks of dynamite into the cave. The explosion was so strong that the entire hillside crumbled. They never found the dead man's body or the that of the Sisimite, but from the force of the explosion, they were certain that it would have died. So you see, the creature really does exist.
Good day, everyone. My name is Aaron Colon, and I will be presenting on La Llorona, also called the Weeping Woman. In this presentation, we will be presenting on who is La Llorona, the main features of La Llorona, the historical significance, and lastly, we will present on a short story of La Llorona. Who is La Llorona? La Llorona is a Latin American folklore that was made in the 18th century, also called the Weeping Woman. La Llorona roams the waterfront areas, mourning the children whom she drowned. La Llorona is a spirit that is trapped on earth, whose job is to torment or kidnap little children that wanders about the forest alone. The main features of La Llorona. La Llorona is a spirit that is evil. She has long black hair and she wears a white tormented veil. A habit that she has is crying, and she loves to kidnap and torment young children. She also lures and follows drunk men around the rivers or creeks around Latin America. Historical significance of La Llorona. La Llorona is a story that was taught and passed down from generations to generations within the same culture. The story of La Llorona influences and educates the younger generation by instilling cultural values and moral behaviors. The elders use La Llorona to teach the children of the perils that will befall on them if they are reckless. The story of La Llorona also teaches future generations to not get drunk in public or wander about. In this part of the presentation, I will be telling a short story titled The La Llorona Story, written by Tamara Smithing. Late one evening, Don Jose and his assistant were coming home from a distant village on horseback. They rode along the riverside at a steady pace until Don Jose, who was at the front, came to a sudden stop. His gaze had fallen on a remarkably beautiful woman who sat at the river's edge wailing miserably. He was irresistibly drawn to her and dismounted, instructing his assistant to wait for him. He walked eagerly toward the woman, and as soon as she saw him, she beckoned to him to follow her. She led the way for a while, and Don Jose followed her eagerly. The curious assistant had been following them discreetly, and suddenly heard his employee scream, "Cuidado!" The seductress was heading toward a dangerous curve in the river, where the current raged. The assistant watched as his employee approached the woman to try to save her. As he embraced her, she enveloped him in her long hair, and they both disappeared into the water. The assistant returned home in a state of shock, and many days later told his employer had been carried away by the weeping woman.
I'm here to tell you of a tale known as the Lotus Pond, a popular Chinese folklore. Now, the story goes that one day a young girl had gone to the pond to meet with her boyfriend. However, after not arriving for an extended period of time, she grew frustrated in waiting. So she decided to look for him, thinking that he may be on the other side of the pond waiting for her. She gets up and starts to look for him. she finds her boyfriend flirting with another woman. Now, upon seeing that, she gets an overwhelming feeling of pain and sorrow and walks into the pond and drowns. And it is said to this day that her spirit haunts those ponds. Now, many people believe in this folklore, making the ponds very unpopular, especially with males, in the fear that they will hear her call and get lured to her. If they even as look in her general direction or maybe look directly at her, they will be drowned, as she will drag them into the pond, never to be seen again. And some women have said that they still see her spirit walking along the ponds waiting for her next victim. So be careful when traveling to these ponds, or you may be the next victim.
Who is Tata Duende? The name comes from a local term meaning grandfather demon. Tata Duende is a wizened old man who is very short, has backwards feet, and has just 4 fingers on each hand. Tata Duende always wears a tall hat. If you ever encounter him, you couldn't throw him your hands since he'll cut off your thumb. The origin. The Tata Duende is a famous folklore common to the Maya culture and the Mestizo culture.
Where can you find Tata Duende? Well, just go to a bush, any bush, and you will find Tata. That come out the night though, especially on Good Friday, because Tata da one holy man. Just be wary, as if you can't whistle sound like a fire, then you're alright. But if it sound like it close, then Tata might just stay behind your back, watch out on the bush. You just keep that in mind, my nephew.
There's a story of a young girl named Rosalita. Rosalita heard whistling and went into the bushes to investigate. She disappeared. Her parents didn't see her for 28 days. One day, she returned with her hair and mentioned that she had only been gone for 20 minutes or so. Tata de Gente grooms children's hair as he does horses and other animals in nature. He often whistles and comes to steal children. Some of them are allowed to return, while others are never seen again. What happens to the ones who disappear is unknown, as he is difficult to track with his backwards feet. Tata de Gente is sort of like in that children can be scared into behaving with the threat of the appearance of Tata de Gente.
How does Tata Duende look? Well, my niece and my nephew, you see Tata? Tata is one short, ugly woman, must be like 3 feet tall or something. His face so wrinkly, and you think that man never sleep, you know. But you want a big red hat where you see fisherman using them out the sea. Also wear them all hide as they close. But the fingers, only have 4. I don't know how the man hold him a sheet. But you don't take down enough, man, you know. And his feet backwards. The name try track down Tata, but you went the other way. And Tata gone the other way.
Is he dangerous? He is more dangerous than he is good. He protects the forest and animals once hunters are overhunting more game than they need. Once he sees your thumbs, he immediately tries to take them from you by force. However, he also shelters, feeds, and cares for anyone he finds lost in the forest. Once you vex him, legend says he can render you immobile or speechless and fever-ridden for long periods of time. But his true anger comes out when someone tries to imitate his whistle. If he sees any hunters out with weapons or shovels meant for hunting on Fridays, he immediately chops off their head and uses it to decorate his house.
Now that how you stay safe from Tata Duende. You see, you don't have to worry about nothing unless you don't follow the rules of the forest where you the litter. And worse if you kill animals. If you do any of these three things that you hear whistling, make sure you cover your thumbs and run the next direction. Because Tata the go to you.
Today I'll be talking about a folklore that is very well known in Belize and is very unique compared to the other folklores. Her name is Saktabe and she's a Mayan woman who is used to scare misbehaving children and misbehaving husbands. Well, what does Saktabe do? Saktabe leads men into her ceiba tree and she makes them stay there. And if they even try to leave, what she does is that she curses them, and when they go back home they are very sick for many days and eventually die. Now we'll be talking about how Saktabe ended up in this position or her life story. So when Saktabe was young, she was a very cold-hearted person and a very jealous person, especially to this one girl named Seban. Seban was a very beautiful one. She was a prostitute and she was very kind-hearted. What occurred when Seban died, her grave smelled beautiful aroma, and if you would go, it looked like a beautiful garden of different flowers growing around her grave. And what happened was when Saktabe died, it was a total opposite. You would go and visit her and her grave would have a horrible smell and it would only grow spiny cacti. And what happened that her spirit was still jealous even after she died, and she made the underworld spirits bring her back to life in order to lure men that didn't want her. So what happened was when she came back, she wasn't herself, but she was Seban. She had the beautiful black hair, the big eyes, beautiful skin, and was always wearing a white dress. And she stays under her ceiba tree, or she lures men in order for these men to be cursed if they want to leave her, or she even kills them at times. The legend of Saktabe is one of the many myths of the Mayan culture. The word Saktabe in the Yucatan Peninsula illustrates undesirable behavior by men and women. This legend has influenced many movies. They have a movie about her, and even many music was influenced by her. Saktabe has been talked about and brought down from generation to generation, and it continues not only in the Yucatan but in Belize.
Cultural Day is done in commemoration of the distinctive folklore encompassed by countless cultures in our society. We hope the presentations were entertaining and, most importantly, we're optimistic these lasting stories may live on.